Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Hi. I'm Ryan Davis. I'm the executive director of KQED Live, and KQED Live is your favorite local public media station's live events program. We present talks, performances, food tastings, game nights, screenings, live podcast shows like today, and so much more. To advance KQED's mission to inform, inspire, and involve. You can find out about all that we do at kqed.org/live. Are there any KQED members in the audience tonight? Raise your hands. Thank you all so very much. It is support like yours that makes public media possible. And if you are not yet a member, you can get all kinds of great benefits, including special benefits for events like early access to tickets and a few other things you can catch up there. You can find out about how at the QR code or at kqed.org/donate. I want to thank the season sponsors for making KQED Live possible. They're Comcast Business, they're Genentech, and they're the San Francisco Symphony. We want to thank them for their support of our mission for civic and cultural engagement in the Bay Area. But tonight, you are here for a preview of a wonderful new podcast from Snap Studios, a partner of KQED and part of the KQED family. That's also made possible for you by Wondery. So we want to thank them for their great partnership in this series. And without further ado, bring to the stage the man who is the visionary behind Snap Studios. He's the host of Snap Judgment and Snap Studios executive producer, Glynn Washington.
Hello, 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 hello. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. This is a celebration of a podcast that Snap Studios has been working on for over 5 years. How many of you have actually heard the podcast Fire Escape? Wow, a lot of you've heard a lot of this show. Well, if you haven't heard Fire Escape is a show that does a deep dive. It's a partnership, collaboration with Wondery, with KQED, with Snap Studios that tries to tell a story that's never really been told. With some of the people you're about to meet, the show takes you inside the largest incarceration unit for women in the entire world. And it gives you a small sliver of one aspect of it. And that is women who are charged with protecting their community and their own areas from fires. Some of the people in this unit are currently right now fighting the LA fires and trying to beat that back and giving back. Even while they fight and protect that community, they go back at night to sleep behind bars and where they are still very, very, very much incarcerated. Today we're going to tell stories about some of the stories we could not possibly squeeze in everything that happened, all the stories that came out of this little bit of acreage into the show Fire Escape. So you're about to hear some of the behind the scenes stories and some of the context that made this show work. And that's why I am so delighted. I'm so delighted. By the way, my name is Glynn Washington. I'm the host of Snap Judgment. And this show was the first Snap Studio show I didn't host. You're about to meet the host. I'm so delighted. There's going to be a lot more of those coming out here. But when they come on out here, please bring the panel out right now. Let's meet them. There they are. Come on out here. You're about to hear the story behind the story. All right, please have a seat. So as you can tell, this esteemed panel of accomplished women needs a strong man to tell them no. Needs somebody to get out the way as they tell the stories that they're about to have here. And Katie, We are about to hear a clip. And this clip is basically you setting up your world here. Is that right?
Yes.
And can you tell us like a little bit about what were you thinking? What were you trying to portray when you were giving this clip?
Well, thank you so much for giving us this background opportunity. The clip you're going to hear of me is really me at that time. I was young and I was really learning in real time what personal responsibility was, what it was to show up for myself in order to show up for the team and do a good job. And so you'll hear me reflecting on what I felt like, what that took at that time to go out and perform my duties as a professional firefighter. And so, yeah, I'm proud of how I was feeling at that time, and the opportunity to reflect back now and verbalize, that's what I was learning at that time. So I'm proud of that.
This is a small clip from Fire Escape. We play that clip right now.
You're going to be working, physically working, hiking, sweating, eating for 24 hours straight, no sleep. So you got to be in shape physically, mentally, emotionally, you know what I'm saying? Because you could be going for 16 hours and still have to make a life-saving decision in a drop of a dime.
Could you, come on, that's what we, taking us inside. Could you introduce yourself to our esteemed guest?
Yes. My name is KD. That is short for Katie Dixon. A coworker, Paul, gave me KD. You know, because Katie is just like your average white girl, you know, and Paul was like, hey, man, that ain't got enough swag for you. We're going to go by KD. And I was like, yeah. So that's where KD come from. I'm KD. I'm a formerly incarcerated Californian, and I've been free from prisons and jails for 10 years, and that's a good thing. 10 years is good. I'm proud of that, and yeah, I'm excited to be here with you all tonight, and I'm excited about what we're here to share with you all. Thank you.
Now, LaQuisha Johnson, we are about to hear something from you as well. This is, in fact, could you just set up this, just tell us, give us an intro so we understand what we're about to go down.
Yes, thank you. It's a perspective of being incarcerated and still being a firefighter. So it's kind of balancing and distinguishing the two. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and play it.
Honestly, my vision of the firehouse wasn't what it was when I was actually there. I know anything that went wrong, they blamed us. So it's like, you trust us to be out here, save deputies' lives, these people's lives in community to fight fires, yet you're still an inmate.
Could you tell folks who you are and how you came to be here?
I'm LaQuisha Johnson. I was a formerly incarcerated firewoman. I was in the firehouse roughly about 3 years. 2 was with Amika here. Yeah.
Right on. Now, our next panelist, if you heard this show at all, are going to recognize her voice. In fact, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what we're about to hear.
For sure. Well, this clip was really just kind of the what's running through your head on the way to a fire, or when you get to a scene and you have to take all of what you've learned and practiced and put it into action, right? You have this little catalog in your mind of the way you need to respond, the pattern you need to have your nozzle, you know, when you hit a certain type of fire. And as we roll on scene, we're kind of clocking all those things through our minds, preparing for what we're about to step into.
Let's play it.
I hope and pray my skills are good enough to get the job done. Like, I hope I remember the pattern I need to spray my nozzle at when I hit this type of fire. There's like so many different ways that it just could really, really spread.
Amika Mota, you let the world into your life in a kind of unprecedented way. Can you introduce yourself to everyone and say who you are?
Yeah, hey all. So grateful you're all here with us today. My name is Amika Mota. I am currently the executive director of Sister Warriors, also a formerly incarcerated firefighter, mama, partner, all sorts of identities. And I've been free for almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years in March. Been home. Yeah.
And finally, at the far end of our panel is Snap Judgment's own Anna Sussman. Anna has been studying, reporting on, producing stories from some aspect of the penal system here and internationally for over 20 years. And this story and working with some of the women on stage, bringing this to life, this project took over 5 years. Anna Sussman, why did you want to tell this story?
Thanks, Glynn. I first started reporting on Station 5 for KQED for the California Report when I was an intern here a long time ago. And when I got to the fire station, which I had heard about from other reporting, as reporting goes like that, and I realized in talking to the women there and reporting on what happens there, when I realized that these women are put in the position, because of the nature of prison towns, of being the rescuers of their jailers, and what that does to people's kind of vulnerabilities and power dynamics, I just wanted to be in that world as much as I could. I just wanted to hear stories from that world. And that was a long time ago. And then many, many years later, I met this woman, and I knew, well, this is the person to tell that story because of the way she saw the world and interpreted everything. And so, stories tell themselves. You have to follow the story that you have. So the story that we developed with the SNAP team and with Wondery was about womanhood and personhood and what happens when you go to prison and you get stripped of all of your humanity and all of your personness, and the way that this organization, the Firehouse, can kind of maybe offer a road back to your humanness by being in connection with other people and by saving lives and doing all these amazing things. But the thing about the Firehouse is that as a journalist, it was like a forest of stories. Like there were just stories everywhere. Like there was just a story everywhere you turned as a journalist there. And so there's all of these amazing stories about human rights and women's rights and climate change and danger and labor rights that we're going to get into tonight. So I actually wanted to start by talking about Prop 6, which failed here in California a few months ago. And right, that was the involuntary servitude measure. And Amika, I wanted to ask you, as someone who lived and worked in the Firehouse for so long, was there a time when you felt like or realized I am living involuntary servitude or forced labor?
Yes. I would say it was a over and over and over and over again experience in many ways. Everything we did wasn't always by choice. But there definitely are some calls that stick out as really memorable of how it felt to be kind of laboring as property of the state. And one of those is, cotton is a theme that runs through a lot of our calls that we talk about. And the Central Valley is actually a cotton growing region. And we learned a whole lot about cotton. But one of the calls we went on, it was interesting. It was a bunch of cotton bales. One of the things we learned about cotton is that it can actually spontaneously combust, right, in a bale, if the bacteria is just right, conditions are right. So we got called to a cotton bale fire, and our job was to put the fire out, right? But it was this giant, smoking, smoldering bale, and we had to figure out how we were going to do that because just water on the bale doesn't quite work. So we cut the bale open, and Akui was on this call with me.
Got it out.
Recently found a picture of this call too. But we ended up, moving all this kind of cotton onto the dry, dusty ground in the middle of the summer heat in Chowchilla, wearing our turnout gear. It's about 50 pounds, heavy, hot. And we had to rake that cotton for hours and hours in that hot sun, trying to get it out. And I think, some hours into this raking cotton, we were laughing and crying, and it was all of the things. We started singing, and many times during that call, we kept looking at each other like, can you believe this? Like, if we told anybody these stories, they probably wouldn't believe us. But that was one of them,
I think when you told me that story the first time, you said, we all knew what this felt like and looked like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. 100%. And it was a little bit of that, unspoken energy that was there. We kept giving each other these glances. And a combo of some tears and a lot of laughter, and trying to make the situation as best we could.
Yeah. KD, when you were incarcerated, you were very, very young. Is that right?
Yes.
So I guess my question is, what was your experience as the lowest person on the totem pole within the system?
We were young girls where I was at. I was down in the Ventura Fire Camp, and that was the California Youth Authority at the time. Now, you had to be 18, so we was between 18 and I think the oldest person was about 23. I think I was about 20 when I joined the camp. And, it definitely felt at first, isolating. You were away from your family. There's no counselors, no mental and moral support. And then it's a bunch of other young folks, trying to learn this thing and do a good job and be grateful, that you're out of the jail or the prison. And then also too, at the time being young, we were also hopeful, that it was exciting and promising. And yeah, we really thought we could be firefighters. And so, I think those were some of the main feelings that really consumed me at that time in my life.
Did it ever feel forced to you?
Overall, I speak highly of the fire camp program. At that time where I was at, it was a competitive volunteer process to get in there. But there were times and instances where, sure, we felt like prisoners and we felt like we were being forced to work. There were times where you needed something that you saw other folks having. Obviously, I would be comparing that to some of the civilian firefighters that we were working alongside.
Like what?
Good question. A better water pack. We did have the cheap, old, water packs. They were really heavy. You had to carry them on your back. And, looking at modern technology, yours have the little suck hose that, if you're a runner, you see them on your running packs now, little suck hose. And so seeing somebody else with a little suck hose, but mine's is still a manual military canteen type of thing that you gotta unscrew. And so, yeah, that definitely was a good example of wow, if I wasn't an incarcerated fire, I would have that water pack. And so those sort of instances did creep up in the psyche, absolutely.
Were there ever any assignments that you thought you were given that someone, let's say a civilian firefighter, might not have been given?
Yes, absolutely. When we wasn't fighting fires, we also went out on your daily duties. We called it grade. And so when you went out on grade, that's when you would be doing all sort of random work. You would be cleaning cow manure off of a hill cliff for whatever reason. I'm sure they gave us a reason of why we were barely hanging on to this here cliff, bagging up cow manure, but you know, there were some questionable projects that our group will be dispatched to, and I've learned now later on that it looks like we may have been part of a system where private property owners could pay for our services to come in, you know, do extra work to protect their property for future fires. And we also covered other natural disasters, so like floods, landslides, and things like that.
Amika, could you talk about the context of that a little bit?
The context of forced labor?
Yes.
Yes, I can. I mean, I just want to say, you know, the system is designed to do exactly what it is doing. It is designed to put incarcerated bodies to work. We are commodities, and we know that. If you look at what is produced inside prisons and the products we see every day, California flags, American flags, license plates, almonds, there's a lot of product that is coming out of prisons. And, you know, there's the kind of moral debate around, is this slavery, is this involuntary servitude, is this, you know, and I think that's up to folks to decide for themselves. But what I know is that it's set up like this. And if we refuse a job assignment, we can get sent to jail inside of prison, which is the hole or the shoe. I can't think of any other context where you are sent to jail for not showing up for a work assignment. So that's the context. It's forced labor, right? The Constitution has an amendment to allow this to happen. But it's nuanced, it's complicated. People inside want to work. People choose to work. We don't want to stay on our bunks looking at the ceiling. We want to participate in the communities we live in. And, you know, a lot of the times we're making decisions about one horrific situation or the next. You know, so although this program is considered voluntary, there are a lot of the kind of benefits like good time credit or, you know, sleeping on a bed and eating something that didn't come out of the state kitchen. Those are things that it's a volunteer assignment. You have to sign the paper, but it's also one of the only ways you can get home to your family sooner. So in some sense, I don't think it's voluntary. When people are trying to get home to their families, you will do anything to get home.
I agree.
Yeah.
In talking to y'all and learning about prison labor, you know, we learned that there's a range of jobs, right, from clothing and license plates to firefighter, and that that range of jobs is kind of built with the same structures of racism and classism that we have outside of prison as well. And so there are good jobs and bad jobs, and people who get picked for good jobs and people who get picked for bad jobs based on a lot of socioeconomic factors, right? And so I learned that firefighter was a really privileged job that went to really privileged people. LaQuisha, I wonder if you could talk about the story of how you came to the firehouse.
Yes. Well, I've heard about the firehouse when I was incarcerated. I was like 22 at the time. And I heard that you get time off. And so I started to like, you know, ask questions, and people would tell me like, girl, they're not gonna let you in. And I'm like, why? It's like, it's the White House. And so I'm like, what is the White House? That means they didn't allow black girls in the White House. And I was like, okay, but I like still kind of tried. And the captain came and she interviewed me and I got in. And so I was like, okay. And so when I did get there, there were, you know, some white girls, and there was a girl who was dark. She wasn't black, but she was Indian. But, you know, from the outside, you know, they would say she was black. And she told me, she would just be like, you know, just keep your head low, lay low, because, you know, you're a target. And so for a while, I got so in tune with the work, and you know, I really liked fighting fires and going to save people. But I noticed that as people came in, or you know, I've been there longer, I wouldn't be first nozzle. I couldn't be an engineer. I always was threatened. Like anything I did, you're gonna go back in. So it's like it took out, like, you know, I'm young, so I'm just like, you know, I really want to maybe look into this when I go home, you know? And so it kind of just took that away from me. So I just have to kind of put my head down a little bit. And our particular story, there was this other young woman there who was Caucasian. And it was like they psychologically made us beef with each other, like competition. And, you know, I started to run faster, and I was really good at what I did. And there was a situation where we were in front of everyone, the officers, and, you know, things kind of got hostile. She hit me with the broom. And in that moment, I was just like, all eyes were on me, not on the person who, you know, started it. And I knew, like, you know, if I react, I'm gonna get the repercussion. I'm gonna get in trouble. And so, like, but I'm like taking in the picture, like the authority, everybody's watching me, and you know, it was a lot, you know, to process. And so I just had to really like keep that inside and just kind of walk away. Yeah.
You mentioned first nozzle. What does that mean?
So there's like a chain of command. So first nozzle is the person who's like head of like fighting fires. Like they're the person who's like, you know, pull the what is it called, the handle back, and like just kind of really take lead. The second person is the one that kind of backs them. And then the third is kind of like do the grunt work or get the hose and stuff like that. Yeah, and then the engineer is the person who's pretty much in charge of, that sits in the front, that kind of help guides the team and, you know more about the engine. So they put more effort into those, like to have leadership of the other girls and to know, give them more education about, you know, firefighting. And so I wasn't pushed to do that. Yeah, so it was like I had to stay in the back. And it's the same thing in the real world as a Black woman.
So, Anna, when I hear stories like that, and I think about the podcast, I wonder if it makes firefighting look good.
I wonder that.
Are we part of the problem? What's going on?
I mean, I wonder that too. It's like, I think one of the scariest parts about making it and putting it out to the world. You said this project took 5 years. This is part of the reason why. We made it, right? And we finished, I think, 8 or 10 episodes and put music to it and edited it and scored it and read out the credits, and it was like, we made it, we're done. And then we played it for our team, and they were like, this is a problem, we have a problem. And the problem was this, that we made it look too good, for lack of a more eloquent term. I think one person on our team said, you made the firehouse look like a beautiful flower, and it's a prison. And I didn't want to do that. Because this is a program where people have to sign contracts that sign their life away. It's a program where people are forced to do things they don't want to do. It's a program where if you try and have a conversation with a captain about faulty orders, you could be sent back into prison, right? It's a program where people are put in danger.
Speaking of dangers, there's a lot of it. Yep. And Amika, was there a time when you felt that your life, your being, was threatened by your job?
Mm-hmm. Many times. Beyond fire, we also responded to motor vehicle accidents where our exposure on the freeway is pretty intense. If you're helping someone else on the side of a car, or you're always at risk. You're in dangerous situations, for sure, consistently. And there was a call that there was a small town right outside of the prison called Fairmead. It was a little town we went to a whole lot. We would go, it was a small community. They all knew us, the fire girls. We did a lot of medical calls there. There were a lot of folks, a lot of elders in the area that had kind of chronic illness. We would go into and so we were very familiar with Fairmead. It was also quite a few abandoned houses in that area. Pretty often there was like squatters and a lot of drug activity. A lot of the times we'd come into these abandoned houses never quite knowing like if someone was going to jump out with it. We'd see a lot of evidence of activity and people living in these spaces. But there was one call that we went to in Fairmead, and the dispatch was downed power lines that were sparking. And so we rolled in our fire engine. It was really lightly drizzling rain that night, not really foggy, so decent visibility. And we were on the way to investigate what was happening, and our fire truck ran actually directly into a set of downed power lines. And the truck became entangled in those power lines. And as, part of being a firefighter is hearing war stories consistently from your colleagues and people that had, been at incidents. And so, I think electrocution was a real fear. It was a real fear. It was something that we had heard multiple times of like these types of incidents. You can't do much. Like on a fire, you are responding. You're fighting something. You're navigating and moving your body and your equipment to fight something, right? Same as in a car accident. You have a goal of what you're doing, but we rolled into these power lines and then just had to stop, and we had to wait. There wasn't anything we could do. We were stuck. And we were also, the captain that was driving the truck and leading our crew that night, I would say was a repeat offender of like really sticky, not well thought out situations.
Very panicky.
Very panicky, very nervous. So we were in his hands in a lot of ways, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, I think those are one of the ones I just remember thinking a lot during that call, like, if we die here in this truck, like next to this captain, and like, is this how it's gonna be? I mean, it was so depressing hours to sit there and wait for PG&E to come and kind of deactivate those lines. So that's one of those.
Thank you. We're going to open this up actually right now because I know that a lot of people have questions for this panel, and you can get some of those questions answered. Ryan, you're going to have that microphone. He's going to go out to you, and we're going to get these questions answered. Questions.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. A question for Amika. So we start off the conversation by talking about Prop 6 and the fact that it didn't pass.
Yep.
So now, as Californians, what can we do in terms of providing protections or supporting protections or fair wages for incarcerated firefighters?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We do have, well, I want to say that the Prop 6 fight is not over. It will be a different proposition when it comes, but we're not done, and we more than ever need to engage a much broader alliance of people that will fight alongside us to amend the California state constitution and eventually the federal constitution. But there is a bill that has been introduced this year by Assemblymember Bryant. I believe it is AB 267. Please double check that. But that would actually get firefighters to minimum wage. That is the absolute, like, the least we can do is get firefighters to a minimum wage currently. You know, I think the LA fires were a horrific reminder to all of us, you know, about what firefighters are doing out there on the front line. And we had almost 1,100 incarcerated firefighters on the line at the height of the fires, right? You know, and even the ones that are making up to $10 a day, it's not adequate, and it doesn't allow us to transition home safely. You know, I think that people talk a lot about public safety and what does that really look like. That really looks like, you know, housing, access to security, transition, right? So that is a bill that we could use some support on currently. And there's, I think, multiple ways we keep attacking the problem. You know, removing barriers for people that want to fight fires. And yeah, bare minimum now, let's get our firefighters to minimum wage.
Thank you for sharing your stories. It's really courageous and powerful. Where does abolition fit in with the conversation of the amending of the Constitution at the state and federal level for all of you, for us?
I think abolition principles would be woven into the whole idea of doing away with the last vestiges of slavery. I think that's a common understanding, that last clause to allow folks convicted of a crime or whatever the verbatim is one of the last vestiges, not the last, but one of the last vestiges of slavery. So I would say abolitionist principles is woven into that. But I did want to just say that Prop 6 was not about prison wages at all. So just to clear that up, and we think that that is a misconception and that could be possibly why the bill didn't make it. Prop 6 was not about increasing prison wages at all. Prop 6 was about people having the autonomy to choose to work and not be penalized, because a lot of times it's pit, either you're gonna work or you're gonna attend a rehabilitation group, whatever that is. Maybe you need anger management, maybe you need Gamblers Anonymous, whatever it was you needed. And so a lot of times it's an either or. And so Prop 6 was about giving people the autonomy to be able to choose whether I should be doing classes or working without being penalized and threatened. So I just wanted to slide that in there.
Hi, thank you. Thank you all for coming this evening. I'm really just all the way into hearing your stories, and thank you for your service. With that, I want to ask you a little bit. I'm curious about what are your opportunities like after putting your life on the line and doing all of this hard work? You know, people go through all this extensive training to become cops, to become firefighters. You've obviously done the same. I want to hear about your career pathways that I personally think you all should have and be entitled to after your sacrifice. Thank you.
Katie, LaQuisha, go ahead, and I want to hear your answer, and I want to hear, Katie, if you could tell a little bit about your journey as well. After,
You want me to go first? Or
no, LaQuisha, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, well, initially, like I was around 24 when I was released. There really wasn't any opportunities, and that was something I was going to share later. But yeah, I went to fire station after fire station, and they told me no. And so now, actually, there was an opportunity that opened up, and I actually did the testing yesterday, so I'm actually going to be in a fire program. So yeah, it was more of a choice now than a survival at the time.
I think for me, what I will contribute to that answer is, I think that's part of, like the problem in the robbery of the situation you know, there are pathways. You got to be able to navigate them. You got to like know somebody. You got to be super diligent. You know, and so for me, I came home. I was young. I went to school. I went to fire through Solano County. It's fire technology. That's the name of it. I was trying to remember the terminology. I haven't chased the industry in a long time now. But I did come home and chase fire technology. I went to community colleges trying to pursue it. I got into a wildland fire academy because where I was at, we was primarily responding to wildland fires. And it's just, the main barrier is this EMT licensure at the state level. You know, when you think of a firefighter, you're thinking of someone that's rolling up on one of these fantastic fire trucks, throwing those ladders up to that 1,000-floor building and climbing on up there and jumping on out with their little hoses and spraying it on down and take care of that building. And a firefighter that's responding to, like Amika and them describe, you know, the elderly person in their home that may need, I don't know what folks need when you responded to the new air machine, I don't know. But those are like the ideas you think. And so the wildland firefighter, we want to do more than that. So that's what you see, the firefighters right now, thank God, they are getting a lot of positive news press with the LA fire and stuff. Those are wildland firefighters. We want to do more than that. It's kind of capped and limited. So you can pursue a wildland firefighting career, but again, you have to know somebody. You got to like go above and beyond because there is a lot of training. So you're running into people trying to discredit that training. And anyways, I kind of got a little all over the place there, but what I was saying was you can't get your EMT licensure in order to pursue those municipal firefighting careers. And that's where you can climb the ladder and become these grandiose firefighters and stuff like that. Without that EMT licensure, you're relegated to just this one kind of career path. And you want to do more than that, you know, when you're thinking about what a firefighter is. And so that's kind of really where you're really cut off at really pursuing a firefighter career to its fullest potential, to its fullest benefits, not just as a wildland firefighter. You want to be a battalion chief or something like that, and you just will never reach that pathway without that first step, and that's that EMT licensure, and that allows you to get that firefighter 1 cert, and that's how you can go on and do all these grandiose things. So there's a lot of barriers, and there's a lot of limitations, and there have been policies in the past that were really good starter packages, but there's a lot we can do to kind of ensure these pathways for folks. I'll leave it there for time purposes.
I might just add one piece to that, which is an additional barrier. There is absolutely like steps in the right direction with policy, not nearly enough. But in 2020, there was a bill that was passed that would allow for a pathway to expungement, which then could allow you to get your certification as an EMT. Not a ton of people have gone through it. It's less than 40. You needed legal assistance. It's a big effort. But I also want to say what was really clear when that legislation was being passed was that that is not the final barrier.
Yes.
What exists after that is the stigma of hiring a formerly incarcerated firefighter. And so in 2020, we had chiefs across the state that were opposing this legislation, that were saying, if I have 10 firefighters in front of me that are all vying for the same job, I sure as hell am not going to pick the formerly incarcerated that potentially has character, issues. So we can keep fighting policy-wise, but it's not going to change the narrative that exists around who is worthy of doing this work and who's not.
I think an added complexity is that firefighter culture is really adjacent to law enforcement culture, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of crossover there, and so those are really hard prejudices to get over when you come from a law enforcement culture.
Yes.
I mean, she mostly asked my question. I've done some wildland work and a lot of prescribed fire work, and I've had the honor of working alongside some formerly incarcerated women. So yes, thank you for your work. And I had also been wondering if any of you had gone on to pursue fire work since leaving those camps. So
I will
if there's
say-
anything else you want to add, I'd love to hear it.
Listen to Katie's story if you can, if you want to hear like a really intimate and amazing journey that answers these questions in a personal way. It's available on Wondery Plus right now, and in a couple weeks it'll be available on Wondery or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I know a couple of you, so hey there. I didn't know any of these stories, so amazing. But what I wanted to ask is whether there are differences between female firefighting and how you're treated and the pathways and what you understand about male firefighters, incarcerated male firefighters.
Good question.
Yeah, there is absolutely a difference. I mean, as a woman, they think we're inadequate to do the job. They don't think we're strong enough, fast enough, you know, and it is hard to navigate. Even when we were alongside the males, when we would go on calls, they would just kind of look at us like, okay, you guys can't do this. And we would outshine them every time.
Every time. Every time. I mean, I would add to that there, you know, when we look at incarceration, the statistics of incarceration, we definitely see more men that are incarcerated than women. And so we often see that represented when we're talking about incarcerated firefighters. Like if you kind of have kept up on the media around incarcerated firefighting during the LA fires, it was primarily focused on the men that were on the fire ground. I mean, not anywhere to be found did we see one of our sister siblings, you know, featured, spoken to. I mean, you actually just, there is a fire camp in the middle of Malibu that houses 39 women, right? And like, not once did we hear about them. So it's actually, you know, it's an issue too. We're often, in general, in the picture of incarceration and certainly in the conversations of incarcerated firefighting, often lost and forgotten and kind of left out of the conversation. And I would also add that there's another dynamic that we face on the fire ground, and that is the fact that we are women, right? We are often dealing with men on the fire ground that treat us not just as if we can't do their job, but as if we are objects, you know, to be kind of toyed with. And so we're facing a different climate and energy than our brothers on the fire line. So yeah, there's a lot of dynamics that are really, really different for women that are fighting fire. But we were also like so fiercely proud to roll up to a fire with 5 deep women, you know, anyway.
There was in interviewing folks, civilian firefighters who you fought alongside of, and interviewing women who were firefighters before they were incarcerated and fought on all male teams and then became incarcerated firefighter and fought on all female teams. They talked about a real different culture of support, right? And actually another woman whose story is featured, when she was on an all male firefighting team, what they did to support one another was drink. And that landed her in prison with a DUI. And then at Station 5 and fighting with you all, she learned how to process all of the trauma that you guys see every day and all of the really intense experiences that you have out there pretty differently.
This is kind of a humble personal question. Do we know of a single Asian, Black, or Latina woman who is seen as a capable firefighter other than yourselves? Do we know of anyone? That's one question. And this is going to break my heart if the answer is no. Were there any white women who you felt had your back, respected you, listened to you, and would protect your life, who loved you? Were there any people who understood what you were facing and perhaps were facing it themselves even if they were white? That they were invisible? Thank you.
There we go.
Sorry, y'all. Yes, you made me laugh.
Maybe a real big range of answers up here.
Yeah, it's a lot of answers.
I'm gonna say yeah. There were, white folks where I was at that supported us. And then as your first question, I'm sure there's some boss-ass Black, Asian firefighter women right now. We don't know. I don't know them, but I'm sure they're out there, and I hope they're watching, and I hope that this tings at their little heart, and they could step up and be willing to go to bat if a formerly incarcerated woman show up at their firehouse looking for a job.
You know what? I do want to chime in. Like the two girls that I actually did the, doing the training with, one was white and one was Hispanic, and like we already have a bond, like because like okay, us three, we're here, we're doing this. So yeah. So I'm hoping to make solidarity with them.
I think it's very clear that Black women and women of color in powerful positions are often targeted, and we also saw that clearly during the LA fires where a queer Black woman was blamed, right? And it was like, so, it was, yeah. So we know it's an issue. And my response to your question about like who has our back, even in reflecting on that tangled but downed power lines call with this captain, it was hard for us to respect him because we didn't. He was very nervous. He wouldn't really want to be in his hands in a situation like this, right? But in that situation, we had no choice, but we all had each other's backs. And it didn't matter, even the difference between race, power dynamic of that being our captain and our CO and our jailer, we were in that situation together. Like if we didn't get out together, we weren't getting out. Yeah. And so that was 100% the vibe on the fire ground at all times. There could be daily functions that were really clear that Black women in particular were treated awful in the firehouse or not permitted to come in. And everything aside, even with Broom Sis, who we functioned with, right? Like we had to ride together and we had to have each other's backs. And I guarantee you that every firefighter out there, incarcerated or not, is going to talk about that camaraderie and the solidarity that you have with your crew.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That I think was one of the hardest things that we encountered in making this story, like we were talking about earlier, right? How can you balance telling a story of slavery and imprisonment with what I spoke to probably 20 women from Station 5, and all of them had so much love and gratitude for the program, right? There was this feeling that this program changed lives and saved lives and encouraged love and encouraged humanity. And we did save one last story for you guys. KD, can you tell us the Ridgeline story?
Oh, yeah. Damn, we out of time already? Yes, I love telling a Ridgeline story. This is, even still, right now, I'm making 39 in a couple of days. This is still a highlight of my life. And right now I'm in a position, I'm doing pretty well for myself, so I'm traveling the world. I went to Egypt last year. It was hot, almost passed out in one of them tombs. But I'm saying that to say this is still, even with that, all my trips and stuff, this is still one of the highlights of my life. And so my group, we was a primarily wildland firefighter group. So we was like a group it was 17 of us with our captain. I forgot what those guys are titled at the Ventura Fire Station that would come with us every day. I don't know what their little titles was, but they was there everywhere. And so we had this one assignment. It was a big fire called the Zaka Fire. This was in 2007. And so I forgot what county we was in too. It was somewhere down here somewhere. Somewhere down south somewhere. And so this one assignment we was gonna go watch the ridgeline. And so our duty was to just watch the ridge. If the fire come over this ridge, Then we need to signal to somebody else that the whole base camp needed to move. And base camp is where you set up this little small fire town. When these big wildfires take off, like in LA, well, I don't know how they picked the spot because I never made it that high, but you'll set up this little fire town where you go to rest, there's showers, there's food, there's medical, there's helipads, there's whatever you feel like you need out there. And so our job was to watch that ridge. So if the fire gets to that ridge, base camp needed to move. And so that's how critical it was. And we was gonna be out there for 72 hours. And so how do we get to this ridge? We needed to get out there quick and we need to get back quick. And so they were gonna fly us to this ridge. And we were like, oh, you're gonna fly us? And they're like, yeah, we're gonna fly y'all. And we're like, well, like what, on the back of a bird? Like, how we're gonna get flew out there? And they're like, no, you're gonna get on these helicopters. And we're like, wait, what? We about to get on some helicopters? They're like, yeah, your group, you're about to get on. And so we was just so excited. And so I just really remembered it was so vivid. We was flying on these military helicopters. They were Black Hawk helicopters, and I guess they were retired military helicopters, so they had been retrofitted to transport firefighters in these situations. And so it was just so dope. Like, they taught us, what to do. Like, you had to put your tools over there, and you had to take your hat off and hold it, and you had to duck down. And even though you can't see the blades, you got to be low because you get your head chopped off because that's how fast they spinning. And so we went there and we were all like fighting for a window seat. We're like, no, you go first. I want the window seat. Well, I want to be by the window. Like, no, you go. And they're like, come on, it's no time for joking. Let's get on here. And we're like, no, I'm going to get this window seat. And then this one guy was like, hey, it's a hole in the floor. And so you will be able to look out the hole in the floor. So you really don't have to worry about no window seat. And so we was like, oh, okay. And so we all filed in, blah, blah, blah. And just lifting off and flying to this ridge. I'm not sure how far we went or how far it took, but we was like dangling our feet out the floor, and like, this is the only time in my life I've been on a helicopter. Yeah. And it was a military helicopter. And that was just like such a once-in-a-lifetime experience. We flew back on a regular helicopter. It was still a helicopter, but it was regular. And so we don't need to tell that story. But it was just such a life-changing, powerful moment. We felt validated. We felt special. Like, the other groups was not getting on the Black Hawk helicopter. They might have was getting on a regular, or they might have had to drive to wherever their station was and potentially hike, the last few hours to their ridge, but not us. We got on this Black Hawk helicopter, and we just was dangling our feet, and we stayed out there and so that was one part of the beauty, and I really just remember that. We stayed out there for the 3 days, and the fire never hit the ridge, and we just stayed out there, and we was dirty for 3 days, so that's the longest I've ever been in my life without a shower. The 72 hours, because that was the shift time. And so it was just so free. We felt good. We wasn't babysitted by no police. Our captain and our other folks that was with us, they were just so relaxing, and they had to helicopter us if we needed more food and stuff. They helicoptered it to us, and so twice a day you would get a drop. And so now that was a thing, like, you went last time to get the drop, I want to go get it now. And so, because they had to position it, you had to hike to a position, and it was like dangling from this rope, and it was like, oh, this is a drop, and it was just so surreal to experience something like that. We really felt like real firefighters, and we felt validated, and I just remember that, and that was just such a joy of being a part of that program. And again, that was one of the best experiences of my life till this day. To fly on that helicopter and hang out for 3 days, dirty and dusty, and eating the MREs. Those are these military meal ready to eat. So that's primarily what we were eating. You pour the water in the little packet, and some taste better. So that was another thing. Which one you got? You got the beef stew one? Like, let's trade. And it was just really cool. And that's just in my mind, obviously. And so, yeah. It's dope.
Amika, I want to throw to you for some closing thoughts.
Okay. Okay.
Got some closing thoughts?
I got some closing thoughts. I mean, I guess I'm just going to return to your question around abolition and maybe where this kind of weaves into both this program and the proposition. And I guess, you know, like we have beautiful memories of our time fighting fires. And I'm going to say that is in spite of the fact that we were doing that in prison. And most of the beauty that we hold and share has to do with each other. Like it really does. It has to do with the space that we created inside for and with each other that allowed us to thrive in these really horrific conditions. And so this tension around giving so much praise to this program that was transformative to so many of us is that we know it doesn't have to exist within a prison. Like, we don't have to have these spaces where people can heal and grow. And the only way you can access that is by being incarcerated. Like, that's not the case. And so I just want to plant the seeds that I think that, you know, like, we are the ones that can build a version of what healing, restorative justice, making amends for harms we've caused, like, it's something that we have in our hands and in our community's hands. We just have to be able to look outside of what currently exists to be able to dream, envision a different world where we don't have to experience like joy and the vision of the forest and dangling our feet, you know, while we're incarcerated. I think there's many other ways we can create healing spaces that will work for our folks. So that's just kind of what's on my mind.
Wow. I want to thank everyone on this stage and the dozens and dozens of people who work to make this show, both formerly incarcerated, and people who are on the outside. So many people work to make this show. This was done in partnership with Wondery, and it's one of those rare times when the public media space partners with the for-profit space to make something really, really special. Couldn't have happened without them. I want to thank KQED for letting this happen as well, and so many people at SNAP. And thank you for coming out on a Thursday evening to hear the story behind the story. Thank you. Oh, yeah. And, I didn't forget, Ryan. I did not forget. Be sure to check out the next event here at KQED Live, a behind-the-scenes look at how opera is made with the San Francisco Opera Company musical director Eun-Sung Kim, live performances by the Opera Adler Fellows. It's next Tuesday. Check out KQED's website for more information. Thank you very, very much.